Kenya, a nation celebrated for its vibrant culture and economic potential, finds itself wrestling with a formidable adversary: national debt. This debt crisis is not just a financial issue, it is a complex web that affects every aspect of life in Kenya, from the bustling streets of Nairobi to the rural heartlands. This issue, often relegated to the back pages of newspapers and the dry pronouncements of economists, has become an undeniable force shaping the country's present and casting a long shadow over its future. The conversations around debt are no longer confined to academic circles. They are now part of everyday discussions among ordinary Kenyans. The weight of this debt, exceeding a staggering 10 trillion Kenyan shillings, is felt in every corner of Kenyan society. From the small business owner in Nairobi to the farmer in the countryside, everyone is feeling the pinch. As the government grapples with dwindling resources and mounting pressure to service its debts, the consequences are increasingly evident. Public infrastructure projects are halted, and the strain is visible in the financial district of Nairobi. Essential services face cutbacks, infrastructure projects stall, and the promise of economic prosperity feels increasingly distant for ordinary Kenyans. Schools are left without resources, and healthcare services are stretched thin, leaving many without the care they need. The situation is further complicated by allegations of corruption and mismanagement, with whispers of misappropriated funds and opaque lending practices fueling public anger and distrust. These allegations have only deepened the crisis, making it harder to find a clear path forward. In this context, the Kenyan people find themselves at a crossroads. Communities are coming together to discuss their future, and families are grappling with tough decisions about their livelihoods and well-being. The path ahead is fraught with difficult choices, each carrying its own set of risks and rewards. The decisions made now will shape the future of the nation for generations to come. As the government, international financial institutions, and influential figures like businessman Jimmy Wanjigi grapple for solutions, the stakes couldn't be higher. The eyes of the world are on Kenya, watching to see how it will navigate this crisis. The following sections delve deeper into the complexities of Kenya's debt dilemma, examining the scale of the problem, the alleged missteps that led to this point, and the potential consequences of inaction. We will explore the human stories behind the numbers and the potential paths forward for this resilient nation. The sheer magnitude of Kenya's national debt is a cause for serious concern. Over the past decade, the country has seen its debt levels rise at an alarming rate, driven by both domestic and international borrowing. By September 2024, the debt had ballooned to over 10 trillion Kenyan shillings. This staggering figure is not just a number, it represents a heavy burden on the nation's economy and its people. This represents a significant portion of the country's gross domestic product, indicating a level of indebtedness that could have severe and long-lasting consequences for the economy. The high debt-to-GDP ratio is a red flag for potential investors and can deter much-needed foreign investment. To put this figure into perspective, consider that interest payments on the debt now exceed the government's expenditure on development. This means that the government is spending more on servicing debt than on building new infrastructure or improving public services. This means that a substantial portion of the national budget, instead of being channeled towards vital sectors like education, healthcare, and infrastructure, is being siphoned off to service debt obligations. The impact on social services is profound, with schools and hospitals often lacking the necessary resources to function effectively. This creates a vicious cycle where resources are diverted from essential services, hindering economic growth and further exacerbating the debt burden. The lack of investment in critical areas stifles development and perpetuates poverty, making it harder for the country to break free from the debt trap. The situation is exacerbated by the fact that a significant portion of this debt is external, meaning it is owed to foreign creditors. This external debt often comes with stringent conditions and higher interest rates, adding to the financial strain. This exposes Kenya to the vagaries of the global financial system, making it vulnerable to fluctuations in interest rates and exchange rates. Any adverse changes in the global market can have a direct and immediate impact on Kenya's ability to service its debt. Such volatility can make debt servicing increasingly expensive, putting further strain on the national treasury. The government may be forced to cut back on essential services or increase taxes, both of which can have negative repercussions on the population. The escalating debt burden threatens to erode Kenya's economic sovereignty, limiting its ability to chart its own course and potentially leading to a situation where external creditors hold significant sway over the country's economic policies. This loss of control can undermine national development goals and compromise the country's future. Adding fuel to the fire are allegations of corruption and financial mismanagement, particularly surrounding the accumulation of this massive debt. Businessman and politician Jimmy Wanjigi, a vocal critic of the government's handling of the economy, has been particularly outspoken in his condemnation. Wanjigi alleges that a significant portion of the debt, which he terms odious debt, was unlawfully accumulated under the previous regime. He claims that hundreds of billions of shillings, ostensibly borrowed for development projects, cannot be traced to any specific initiatives. This raises serious questions about the transparency and accountability of the borrowing process, suggesting that public funds may have been siphoned off for personal gain. Furthermore, Wanjigi accuses high-ranking officials of colluding with banks and bond marketers to secure loans on unfavorable terms, enriching themselves at the expense of taxpayers. He points to the questionable use of Eurobond funds, a staggering 900 billion Kenyan shillings, as a prime example of this alleged financial malfeasance. These accusations, if proven true, paint a disturbing picture of systemic corruption within the government, further eroding public trust and confidence in the country's institutions. In response to the mounting pressure from both domestic critics and international observers, the current administration, led by President Ruto, has taken some steps to address the debt crisis. These steps, though significant, are seen by many as just the beginning of a long and arduous journey. However, it remains to be seen whether these measures will be sufficient to avert a full-blown economic catastrophe. The stakes are incredibly high, and the margin for error is slim. One of the government's key initiatives has been the establishment of a presidential task force, tasked with auditing the public debt. This task force is seen as a critical component in the government's strategy to regain control over the nation's finances. This task force, chaired by Nancy Onyango, and comprising experts like LSK President Faith Odhiambo, has been mandated to undertake a comprehensive review of the country's debt portfolio. This review is expected to provide a clear picture of the financial obligations that the country faces. This includes verifying the actual stock of debt, reconciling loan proceeds, assessing the utilization of borrowed funds, and ensuring that the funds have been used for their intended purposes, and evaluating the return on investment for various projects. This evaluation will help determine the effectiveness of the projects funded by the borrowed money. In addition to the task force, the government has also announced plans to explore alternative financing mechanisms, which could provide more sustainable financial solutions in the long term, including seeking more favorable loan terms from bilateral partners, and negotiating better deals to ease the financial burden, and exploring the possibility of debt restructuring. Debt restructuring could potentially provide the much-needed relief by extending payment terms or reducing interest rates. These measures, while potentially helpful in the long run, do little to address the immediate pressure of debt servicing. The immediate challenge remains how to meet the current debt obligations without further straining the economy. The government's ability to navigate this complex financial landscape, while simultaneously addressing the concerns raised by critics like Wanjigi, will be crucial in determining Kenya's economic future. The road ahead is fraught with challenges, but with strategic planning and effective implementation, there is hope for a more stable economic outlook. The government's ability to navigate this complex financial landscape while simultaneously addressing the concerns raised by critics like Wanjigi will be crucial in determining Kenya's economic future. When we talk about progress, it's often seen as a double-edged sword. On one hand, there's growth, development, and opportunity. On the other, there are challenges, inequalities, and unforeseen consequences. In Kenya, this duality is particularly evident. The economic strides made in recent years are impressive, yet they come with their own set of complications. Balancing these aspects is crucial for sustainable growth. It's a complex dance, requiring careful consideration and, well, a bit of foresight. As we move forward, it's essential to remember that progress isn't just about the destination, but also about how we get there. In recent years, Kenya has faced significant challenges with its national debt. the country has had to navigate the murky waters of debt default and distress exchanges. These financial maneuvers are often seen as last-ditch efforts to stabilize an economy on the brink. While these measures can provide temporary relief, they also come with long-term consequences that can affect the nation's economic stability for years to come. As Kenya grapples with its debt issues, a looming crisis is on the horizon. The combination of high debt levels, economic instability, and political uncertainty creates a perfect storm. If not addressed promptly and effectively, this crisis could have far-reaching implications for the country's future. The stakes are high, and the need for decisive action has never been more critical. Navigating the political landscape in Kenya is no easy task. The interplay between economic policy and political maneuvering adds layers of complexity to an already challenging situation. Leaders must balance the demands of their constituents with the harsh realities of economic constraints. This delicate act requires not just skill, but also a deep understanding of both the political and economic terrains. Despite the challenges, there is hope for charting a sustainable path forward. By implementing sound economic policies and fostering political stability, Kenya can work towards a brighter future. This involves not only addressing immediate concerns but also laying the groundwork for long-term prosperity. The journey ahead is fraught with difficulties, but with determination and strategic planning, a sustainable and prosperous future is within reach.